brother said. You are pathetic, stop pretending you're doing well, Mom agreed. I stayed silent until I showed them my new business, and suddenly their faces went white. I kept my eyes on my plate as my brother Tyler leaned back in his chair, grinning like he just told the best joke in the world. You are pathetic, he said loudly, so everyone at the table could hear. Stop pretending you're doing well. There was a pause, a beat where I almost thought maybe someone would call him out. Then my mom laughed. It wasn't a small laugh either, but that loud, knowing one she reserves for when she thinks someone has spoken a truth nobody else will. Honestly, she said, turning to me, he's right, Mark. You've always been, well, you know, struggling. You just don't want to admit it. I sat there, my fork resting against the roast chicken I'd barely touched. The clink of glasses and the sound of my family's amusement filled the room, and I just kept quiet. I'd been mocked by them for so many years that you'd think I'd be numb to it by now. But there was something about that moment that hit differently. I had come to this dinner knowing exactly what would happen, the same old performance. They'd gloat about their big salaries and promotions, ask me a few leading questions just so they could laugh at the answers, and then brush me off like some embarrassing relative they only tolerate out of duty. What they didn't know was that this year, I wasn't the same Mark they remembered. The first sign that this dinner would spiral came before we'd even sat down. I'd been standing in the hallway, waiting for them to clear the front room of coats and bags, when I overheard my brother whispering to my mom in that smug tone he'd perfected since high school. Watch this, he said. I'm going to finally get him to admit how bad things are. He always acts like he's fine. I could hear my mother's reply, low but clear enough. He's always been a disappointment, Tyler. Don't expect much. I almost turned around right then and there. For a second, I imagined just leaving without a word, walking back to my car, and letting them enjoy their little show without me. But something in me held back. I stayed. I stayed because I wanted to hear it all. I wanted to see the looks on their faces when they realized what I'd been hiding from them. So I smiled, walked into the dining room like I hadn't heard a word, and sat down as if nothing had happened. We were barely 20 minutes into the meal before the conversation turned into a slow, relentless dissection of my life. It always starts innocently enough. Tyler talking about his promotion at the bank. Mom bragging about her garden club like it's the center of the world. Then the glances start, those pointed questions disguised as small talk. So, Mark, Tyler said, cutting into his steak like he was hosting a talk show. How's that little thing you're doing? What is it again, freelance? Contract work? I swallowed a piece of dry bread before answering. Yeah. Been keeping busy. Busy? He laughed. That's one way to put it. I mean, you've been at that for years, right? And still, nothing big? Mom chimed in. He's always been stubborn. He could have joined a real company like you, Tyler, but no, always off on his little projects. They laughed together, an easy rhythm they'd perfected over decades. I didn't answer. I just let them talk. They moved on from my work to my apartment. You're still renting, right? Then to my car. That thing's still running? Then, finally, to the subject they'd been circling like vultures all night. You know, Tyler said, leaning back and shaking his head with mock pity. You are pathetic, stop pretending you're doing well. Mom sipped her wine and smiled. Exactly. I mean, Mark, you've always been comfortable settling. Don't you ever feel embarrassed? I don't know how you live like that. They started talking over me then, listing out their vacations, their new cars, their expensive plans, as if I wasn't even there. I just sat there silent, looking at my plate. Every word was like a match they kept striking, trying to set me off. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. Not yet. Instead, I thought of all the nights I'd spent in that tiny apartment with nothing but a second-hand laptop and a notebook full of ideas. The nights I'd fallen asleep at my desk, trying to figure out how to turn a sketch into something real. The years of failure that no one saw. And then, finally, the breakthrough. They didn't know a thing. Not about the company I'd quietly registered 3 years ago. Not about the app I'd built with no backing, no outside funding, just sheer stubbornness. Not about how, 6 months ago, a partnership had turned it all into something bigger than I'd ever imagined. They thought I was still the same man they laughed at on that porch 10 years ago, the one they wrote off as a dreamer. They had no idea that I was sitting there with proof in my pocket that everything had changed. I waited. I let them go on. I let every insult pile on top of the last, building the silence between us like a wall, until there would be no way back once I decided to break it. I think what made that moment so sharp was how casual they were about it all. Tyler leaned forward, elbows on the table, and said, "You know, man, it's sad. You're 35. No house. No wife. No real job. What do you do all day?" Mom laughed, tilting her glass. "Oh, leave him be. He's always been like this. Some people just don't make it." That word stuck to me like a burr, don't make it. I looked around the table, at these people who had spent their lives so sure of where they stood in the world. And for the first time, I wasn't angry. I almost felt curious. How long could they keep talking before they noticed I hadn't said a single word back? Tyler kept going. "Honestly, you should just ask for help. I mean, I could lend you a couple $1,000, get you back on your feet. But you have to stop acting like you're doing fine when you're not. It's embarrassing. Embarrassing." I folded my napkin slowly, carefully, and placed it on the table. "I see," I said. That was all. Mom rolled her eyes. "See? He can't even defend himself anymore. It's like talking to a wall." What they didn't see was my hand sliding into my jacket pocket, touching the folded envelope I'd brought, just in case. For a moment, I thought about waiting until dessert. But then Tyler smirked and said, "Come on, admit it. You need us. You always will." And that's when I decided it was time. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope. Calmly. No theatrics. I placed it on the table between the mashed potatoes and the basket of rolls. "What's that?" Mom asked, looking at it like it was a bill she didn't want to open. "Something I've been working on," I said quietly. And then I pushed it toward them. Tyler raised an eyebrow, snatched it up, and opened it. He pulled out the first sheet, skimmed it, frowned. "Financial statements." He flipped to the next page. "A company profile." "What is this?" he muttered. I didn't answer. I just sat back and waited for it to land. By the third page, the magazine feature with my photo and a bold headline, his mouth had started to open. "Wait," he said. "This is you?" I nodded once. Mom reached over, pulling the papers from Tyler's hands. At first she read quickly, scanning the bold text like it couldn't possibly be real. Then her eyes slowed. It was the article that stopped her cold. "Local startup turns national success. Mark Davis on building a multi-million-dollar company from scratch." Her fingers trembled slightly as she held the page up closer to her face. I could see the moment the words sank in. Her smile disappeared like someone had turned off a switch. Tyler sat back in his chair, staring at me. You own this?" he asked, almost whispering. "Yes," I said, finally meeting his eyes. "I built it. 3 years of nothing but work, and 6 months ago it exploded. We're in 10 states now. Negotiating to go international next year." The room went so quiet you could hear the clock in the hallway ticking. "I don't understand," Mom said. "You never said anything." "Why would I?" I asked. "You never asked about anything except what I didn't have. And you seemed so sure you already knew the answer." I reached across the table and picked up the last sheet from the stack, a single page with numbers. "This," I said, tapping it with one finger, "is my monthly income as of last quarter. After taxes. You can compare that to your annual salaries if you want to." Tyler glanced at it. His face drained of color. He didn't say a word. "And this," I added, sliding another folded paper from my inside pocket, "is the list of properties I own now. You know that little apartment you like to joke about? I don't even live there anymore. It's just one of several rentals. I bought my own place outright." The silence was deafening. For years I had dreamed of this exact moment, but the reality was sharper than I'd imagined. They looked so small suddenly. So unsure. Do you want to know why I didn't say anything? I asked. I could hear my own voice shaking, but it wasn't anger anymore. It was something colder. Because I was tired of proving myself to people who wanted me to fail. And now that I don't need your approval, I came tonight just to hear you say out loud what you really think of me. I stood up. As I stood, the legs of my chair scraped against the wooden floor, sharp in the quiet. I rested my hands on the table and leaned forward just a little. You know what's funny? I said softly. For years I thought maybe if I worked harder, maybe if I just kept going, one day you'd look at me differently. But tonight? I shook my head. Tonight I realized that you never wanted to see me any other way. Tyler finally spoke, his voice a bit shaky. Mark, come on, we didn't mean. No, I said, cutting him off. You meant every word. You wanted me to feel small so you could feel big. And for a long time it worked. I turned my eyes on Mom. And you, how many times did I bail you out? How many times did I send money when things were hard for you? You laughed at me for it. You mocked me for the same sacrifices you depended on. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. I let you all talk tonight because I wanted to hear it for myself. And I did. Every insult. Every laugh. And now? I took a slow breath. Now I get to decide what happens next. Mom whispered. Mark, we didn't know. I let out a small, humorless laugh. You didn't want to know. I gathered the papers back into the envelope, slid it into my jacket, and straightened up. You wanted to know who I am? Here it is. I earn more in 1 month than both of you do in a year. I've built something that doesn't need your approval. And from this point on, I choose who gets to be in my life. The room felt heavy, like all the air had been sucked out of it. Tyler was still staring at me, as if his brain was trying to catch up to the numbers on that page. Mom's hand was gripping the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles were white. I've listened to both of you all my life, I said, slowly pacing around the table now. Every family dinner, every phone call, every little remark about how I'd never make it. You spoke like you knew everything. Like my future was written before I even started. I stopped behind Tyler's chair. And the whole time, I was building. Working when you were sleeping. Investing when you were buying things to show off. You thought silence meant failure. But sometimes silence just means someone's too busy succeeding to bother explaining it to you. I leaned down, just enough for my words to reach his ear. You called me pathetic tonight. Look at yourself now. He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward Mom as if she'd somehow bail him out. Mark, she said suddenly, trying to put some sugar in her voice. We were just teasing. You know how families are. I turned and looked at her. Families lift you up. They don't spend decades grinding you into the ground so they can feel taller. Her lips trembled. We didn't realize how much you'd accomplished. No, I said. You didn't care. I walked to the head of the table and placed my hands on the back of my now empty chair. You know what the difference is between us? You both thought I needed you. But the truth is, I don't. Not anymore. For the first time in my life, I said the words I had been holding back for years. I'm done. No more dinners where I sit here being the family punchline. No more phone calls pretending this is normal. From this point forward, you can enjoy your lives exactly as they are, with each other. Tyler tried to muster something, anything, to break the moment. Mark, wait. You can't just walk away from family like this. After everything, we're still your family. I paused in the doorway, my hand resting on the frame, and turned back. Family is a choice. And tonight I'm making mine. Their faces were pale, their mouths opening and closing like they had no idea what to say. I had seen them smug, I had seen them angry, but I had never seen them silent. And that silence was everything I'd been waiting for. I could have left right then, but I didn't. I stepped back into the room, just long enough to watch them scramble. That's when Mom tried to recover. Her voice was soft at first, trembling just a little. Mark, wait. You're right, we should have been more supportive. We're proud of you. Truly. It was the fakest thing I'd ever heard. Tyler chimed in, nodding quickly like he was trying to grab onto a sinking ship. Yeah, man, I mean, look at you. That's incredible. I was just messing with you earlier. Don't take it so hard. We're family. Let's celebrate this. I let their words hang there for a moment. Then I smiled, not a warm smile, but the kind you give when you finally see through everything. Celebrate? I asked. You think you can humiliate me for years, and now that you've seen a few numbers on a page, you get to pretend you were cheering me on the whole time? Tyler's mouth opened, but nothing came out. I walked slowly back to the table, placed my hands on it, and said, You both showed me exactly who you are. And I believed you. Don't try to rewrite history now just because you're afraid of what it looks like without me in it. I straightened up and slid my chair back into place. I came here tonight to say goodbye. Not with an argument, not with shouting, just the truth. Mom stood up. You don't mean that, she said, her voice sharper now. You can't just cut us off because of some misunderstanding at dinner. Misunderstanding? I said quietly. That's what you call it. It's been a lifetime of this. I'm just finished playing my part. I turned to leave again. That's when Tyler blurted out. We need each other, Mark. I stopped in the doorway, glanced over my shoulder. No, I said. You need me. And that's the difference. I could feel their panic rising behind me, so I added one last thing, my voice calm, final. I'm choosing peace. You can stay here in the house you built out of pride and smallness. I have no interest in living here anymore. Then I picked up my coat from the back of the chair, walked down the hallway, and opened the front door. I didn't slam it. I just stepped out into the cool night air, leaving the two of them frozen at the table, surrounded by untouched food, staring at the space I had left behind. As the door closed behind me, the sound was softer than I expected, like the last page of a book finally turning. The night air hit me like a wave I didn't realize I'd been waiting for. Cool, quiet, and clean. For a moment I just stood on the porch, staring out at the dark street. Inside I could hear nothing, no footsteps, no voices. Just that heavy, suffocating silence I'd left behind. My car was parked a little ways down, under the one street light that still worked. I started walking slowly, and with every step, it felt like I was peeling off a layer of something I'd been wearing my whole life. It was strange how light I felt. No anger, no triumph, just freedom. By the time I reached the car, I realized I hadn't even looked back at the house. Not once. For the first time in years, I didn't care what happened inside those walls. I leaned against the hood for a minute, letting the cool metal press into my palms. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I pulled it out, saw a mom on the screen, and let it ring. As it rang and rang, my mind drifted to all those years I'd spent letting their words define me. Every joke, every dismissive shake of the head, every dinner where I left feeling smaller than when I arrived. I had believed, deep down, that maybe one day I'd change enough for them to respect me. And now I realized, I'd been free this whole time. It wasn't success that set me free. It was the decision, right there in that dining room, to stop looking for their approval. To finally walk away. The phone stopped buzzing. I got into the driver's seat, closed the door, and for a few seconds just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, feeling the weight of everything I had let go. In the faint reflection on the glass, I caught sight of myself. Not the version of me they'd spent years convincing me I was. Just me. I started the car. As the engine hummed to life, I thought about the future, not theirs, but mine. And I smiled. I drove without music. The road stretched out in front of me, empty, with the glow of streetlights sweeping across the hood in slow, steady rhythms. For a while I let my mind drift, the night outside the windshield turning into a blur. As I drove, pieces of my past floated up one by one. The childhood dinners where Tyler was the star of every conversation, and I was just another chair at the table. The times Mom looked right through me, as if I was a shadow standing beside her golden sun. Every comment that made me think I had to earn their love instead of just receiving it. I thought about how hard I had worked, not just to succeed, but to try and be someone they would see. And then tonight happened. What struck me most wasn't that I'd finally proven them wrong. It was realizing I didn't need to. Their opinions, their laughter, their smug little remarks, they had never been a measure of who I was. I had spent years chasing something that never existed, a version of them that would someday be proud of me. And in that dining room, with the smell of roast chicken in the air, and those papers spread out on the table, it hit me. I didn't want their pride anymore. The car rolled to a stop at a red light. I looked up at the glow above me, that hollow stillness of a city late at night. And I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Not the kind you force when you're trying not to cry. A clean, honest laugh that came from deep inside, from a place that had been locked up for too long. That was when I knew something had shifted in me for good. When I got home, I parked and sat there with the engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, feeling that quiet calm that comes after a storm. I thought about what I'd tell someone else in my position. Someone who's spent years being overlooked, mocked, underestimated by the people who were supposed to love them most. I'd tell them this. You don't have to prove anything. Not to people who have already decided not to see you. Sometimes the only way forward is to stop trying to be chosen by people who enjoy keeping you small. I know it hurts to realize that family can be the very people who hold you back, but there's a strange kind of peace in walking away. In building a life that doesn't revolve around their approval. I walked into my apartment that night with no plans to call them back. I put my coat on the chair, sat down on my couch, and let the silence fill the room. It wasn't empty anymore. I had my company. My work. My friends. A life I'd built from the ground up. And for the first time in 35 years, I felt like I was standing in it, my own life, without anyone else's shadow hanging over me. The last thing I remember before falling asleep was how light I felt, like someone who had finally set a heavy bag down after carrying it too far. And that was it. That was the night I stopped waiting for my family to see me, and finally started seeing myself.